Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. Today is another great day to have a great day. Here we are, almost second quarter of 2025. Time is going fast, and we have a wonderful guest with us here today. But I need you to remember that if you do not follow this podcast, nobody knows it exists. So you don't get notifications when we have wonderful people like Paige with us, and you can't tell your friends. So please, please follow wherever you choose to watch or listen to your podcast so that you get notifications when we have wonderful guests. Speaking of, I have a wonderful guest with me today. Her name is Paige Arnof-Fenn, and she is a sports fanatic. She is a former athlete, although she still is because she does Tai Chi daily. She's also a knitter who happens to be a speaker and a writer and a branding expert and the CEO of Mavens and Moguls. So welcome, Paige, to Productive Joy.
Thank you, Dr. Christie. I am so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, this is going to be fun for sure. So we need to capture people's attention and get them super excited about why they're going to listen to this podcast. So in like 30 seconds or less, what can you tell us that will make people go, oh my gosh, I got to hear this?
So you can find your joy in a career path. You don't need to be in a job that doesn't make you happy, where you feel frustrated or unfulfilled. And I hope when you hear my story that you too will have the courage to switch tracks and find something you really love doing, because that's when I think the magic happens and the roads converge.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And it sounds like there is a pretty good story in there. So, Paige, why don't you take us all the way back to when you were starting your career and show us what has taught you that we aren't stuck and that we do get to pick our future?
So when I graduated from college in the 80s, Michael Douglas had just won the Oscar for the first Wall Street movie. And I saw the movie and just got hooked. I was completely enamored with like the energy and the pace and the drama. It just, when you're 21 years old, it just looks like a roller coaster ride where you're having a blast. I was always really good with numbers, very analytical. My dad and both my grandfathers were commercial bankers. And when I saw the Wall Street movie, I said, oh, I'm going to do investment banking. I'm going to do something different, but I'm sure I'm going to be good at it because they were good at it. And the truth is, I was pretty good at it. It paid really well. I was super excited, but I knew pretty much by the end of my first week, it was not a career path that I was.
Oh, no.
But I had made a 2-year commitment to the bank. So I said, all right, I'm going to make the best of this experience. And I learned a ton. You're working in the trenches with super smart people. But I applied to get an MBA as soon as my 2-year commitment was up. And when I was in business school, I rebranded myself from a finance person to a marketing person. I got the top score in the marketing class. I got a summer internship at Procter & Gamble, which is probably the most recognized marketing company in the world. Every category they compete in, they're number one or sometimes number one and number two. It's all the brands in your house that you don't even realize are all part of the same company. Tide detergent, Crest toothpaste, Pampers, Bounty, Charmin, Pantene, Oil of Olay.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and so I really learned from like the best consumer products company in the world. But big companies come with a lot of structure and hierarchy. And now we're in the 90s and the internet starts taking off, Internet 1.0.
Yeah.
And it was like a big shiny object that I got so distracted, and I just kept hearing about all these companies and doing fun things. And, they were like, again, it was like a wild ride roller coaster, but it was stuff that I really wanted to do. So I left my big cushy corporate job. I was at Coca-Cola at that point, another incredibly well-recognized, well-respected brand. It's sold in like 200 countries around the world.
Wow.
And I joined an internet startup no one had ever heard of before. And I think my mother and my boss both thought I was having a nervous breakdown. Like, why does anyone leave such a big, job that people give them your business card? They're very impressed. But I loved it. It was like the Wild West. The first company I joined, raised about $40 million, and all of
Wow.
it being used in marketing. And it was so fun. I was the head of marketing for this startup company. We went public. We were sold to Yahoo. My husband got a job 3,000 miles away, and we decided to move. And I did another startup as the head of marketing, then another startup as the head of marketing. And all three of them had really good exits. So they were all dot-com survivors and
Nice.
super fun. And I realized like marketing is really that is my thing. But what happened at that point was 9/11 hit, and
Oh,
everybody canceled marketing out of their budget because they were trying to conserve their cash.
yeah.
So marketing jobs just disappeared. But because I had run marketing at three successful startups that were all backed by private equity and venture capital, these people still had their portfolio companies and they still needed help, but they didn't have marketing anymore. So they called me and said, "Hey, can you help me?" My first instinct was, no, I'm not a consultant. I'm the client. I'm the chief marketing officer, but they didn't have jobs anymore for marketing people. So anyway, my husband said, "Paige, all these people need your help. You know what you're doing. Just tell them you'll help. You know people." So I took all the projects and the people that were calling me and all the best people I had worked with in my career who were now out of work. I called the women the marketing mavens, the guys the marketing moguls, and I put them together.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and that was 23 years ago, and we're still going strong. So
Wow.
if you had told me I would be running a company that I started for more than 2 decades, I would have said you were crazy. I never wrote a business plan. When I was in business school, I wanted to be Meg Whitman. I wanted to be the Fortune 500 CEO, but the truth is, my career kind of took all these twists and turns. And this is the longest job I've ever had working for myself. All those jobs I told you about, my longest one was like 3.5 years. And here I am, and I'm still having fun.
That's
And,
awesome.
I feel like really fortunate that I stumbled into a career path that I've enjoyed so much.
Well, and yes, it's clear by the look on your face that this has been a passion of yours, and how great that you rode the waves. I was interviewing someone recently, and she says she was reading a book about Native Americans, and the word linear does not exist in their language because they don't see anything as perfectly linear. And I think that's an important point for all of our listeners today, is that there isn't a straight path. Right now, you might think it's straight here, but if you look to either side, you have taken some twists and turns, and maybe they weren't professional, maybe they were personal, but there isn't any such thing as this is the only way it can happen. How great that you were nimble. And I rode all of those waves as a consumer. And I think about, which jingles stick with me, which things are in my head. And it is not anything recent, it is all from the 80s and 90s. So you were part of the, all of those products that you mentioned, and Coca-Cola and all those things that we just know because you all were really good at your jobs. How cool. Okay, so then fast forward, you start Mavens and Moguls, which I just love the name. And you've now got these brilliant people. How were you able to find people to serve, right? Like how did you figure out how to get what you were doing? I mean, obviously you knew how to market, but how did you get the right customers in your space?
So, it's interesting. I feel like I had clients before I even admitted I was starting a
Mm,
company. Like I said, all the roads of my life and my career have kind of converged in Mavens and Moguls. People that were friends or colleagues in a previous life. I'm one of these people that kind of collects people. If you're somebody that's been part of my world, a classmate, a colleague, a boss, an employee, I stay in touch with people way before social media. I was very viral, I guess,
I was gonna say, or social, even then.
very social, even pre-social media. And so, when 9/11 happened, marketing dried up, all around us. People came to me asking for help because they knew I knew how to do marketing. I had helped them in the past. And, I figured coming out of big brands like Coke and P&G, I felt like you have to look professional. So the internet was starting to take off. I said to a friend of mine from college, she really wanted to learn how to do programming to make websites. And I said, can you make my website? Because I'm going to start a consulting business. These people need help. And I feel like I wouldn't be real if I didn't have a website. And she said, oh my God, I would love it. You'll be my guinea pig. And so, she did the programming. I wrote the copy. That website lasted for like 5 years. It's so
Wow.
embarrassing now to think about, like, oh my God, what was I thinking?
Well, you weren't because it was new, right? Like, and so yes, of course, it doesn't look anything like what it would look like today,
Right.
but
This is my 3.0 website. It
yeah,
really
you were a
started.
pioneer.
Well, a little bit. That is true. But yeah, it's just funny to me. So once I had my website, I needed a logo, I needed a tagline so I could put together some stationery to send out proposals and to send invoices. I started doing a lot of writing and speaking. And, with every time I'd write a column, I got a monthly column, first of all, an entrepreneur magazine, and then I did that for like 4 years, and then I did Forbes magazine for a year, and I used to speak at all kinds of conferences, trade shows, networking events, and every time I'd write something or speak on a topic, someone would either email me, call me, or come up to me after my talk and say, you were talking about something and my company's having that problem too. Can we have coffee and I can tell you maybe you could help us? And so all of those seeds that I was planting kind of, then I had a website they could go to, then they could contact me. A college buddy of mine started LinkedIn, so I was one of the very early users on LinkedIn.
Well done.
So, it's like, I just planted a million seeds. Again, I never wrote a business plan. I never expected this to be the longest job in my career, but be careful what you wish for, because here we are.
Well, and so, okay, so I was recently listening to the podcast Diary of a CEO, and in it, they were talking about the importance of a personal brand now and how, the 21-year-olds, my own kids are almost 24. They'll be 24 next week, and they are navigating uncharted waters because what they were taught in school is kind of antiquated and the jobs that they're vying for are non-existent. Now, my daughter teaches kindergarten, and so in that space, she's so amazing at it. But that space makes really good sense, right? It's clear. Jackson is still searching for his next job, his forever career, right? He's an excellent people person. He is so good at managing humans and logistics and all that kind of stuff, but he's not sure what he wants to be when he grows up. I'm not sure what I want to be when I grow up either, so it's fine. But in hearing that, the number one thing that I heard in this podcast was about personal branding and the importance of, especially for young people, having a way to market themselves so that they can go get these jobs. You've ridden the waves and here you are, right? What advice would you have for this up and coming generation or for those of us that are trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up? What should we be doing so that people know who we really are?
So it's a great question and it's so important. I think a lot of people, like your kids, they're young and they don't even think of themselves as a brand at this point.
Right,
People think LeBron James, Taylor Swift, Serena Williams, Beyonce, they're brands.
right.
But you and me, no, not really. But today, everybody's a brand and
Yeah.
everybody's on all these social media platforms. We're walking around with our phones in our pocket and you're posting and you're giving your status updates and you're tweeting and you're blogging. And guess what? You are a brand. You're putting it out there and people are going to have an opinion on your brand.
Mhm.
And if you don't define your brand, other people are going to define it for you.
Yeah.
So I think if you need to be very intentional and think about the brand you want to be. Who do you want to be when you grow up? What's working? What's not working? What do you like? What do you not like? And all of those things kind of contribute to your brand. And so when I started my career, I was a finance person. I majored in economics. I was the president of the Economics Association in my college. I worked on Wall Street, but then I realized, I'm not really into this. I don't
Yeah.
really like it. I'm not having fun. I don't know that I really am a finance person. And when I looked at all the things that I loved about my finance job, there really weren't that many, but the three things I loved the most when we finished a deal, when you were buying a company, selling a company, helping a company raise money, when the deal was done, you got to put an ad in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times to say that the bank helped the company do the transaction. You also got to plan a closing dinner to celebrate the end of the transaction. And then at the dinner, you gave people little mementos, little toys to celebrate the deal. Those three things were the only things I loved about my job. And my girlfriend said to me, Paige, all of the things you love are not finance. Everything you love is marketing. You're advertising in the newspaper, you're planning events, and you're buying promotional toys. Those are all marketing activities. Those are not finance activities. And here's a big note, like you're a marketing person. So I went back to business school and I didn't even know what really marketing was. Nobody in my family did marketing. I hadn't taken a marketing class in college. I went to a liberal arts school.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And so sure enough, my very first semester in business school, we had a marketing class. And guess what? I got the top grade of the class. So I said, I think my friend really may be onto something. And then I got a summer internship and they made me an offer to come back. And I went back for 3 years after business school. And marketing is really fun. It's intuitive to me. It's exciting. It's interesting. And it's a great kind of balance of your right brain and your left brain. You get to be analytical, but you also get to be creative. And that to me was like the perfect combination.
I love that.
Back to how do you find customers? How do you find clients? You got to do a good job marketing yourself. I appreciate the fact that you like the name of my company, Mavens and Moguls, but that's part of my brand. And if we're going to say we're going to be a branding and marketing company, if we had a boring name that nobody could remember, that would not be a very good testament to our marketing abilities.
Definitely not.
So we have a great brand name. I think we have a terrific logo. I built a website that's now been improved a few times. And, it's a work in progress. But, I had a professor in business school. I took every marketing class I could take in business school. And he used to say, marketing is everything and everything is marketing. And I used to giggle. I was like, he's so silly. Okay, now that I've been doing it for decades, I think he's absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, it is. And that takes us back to the kids, right? Like, so, and I call them kids, they are adults, absolutely, but my kids. And I think what you just said, everything is marketing, marketing is everything, is what we as humans need to recognize now, because the world has gotten a lot smaller, right? In the 80s, in the 90s, before the internet, before we were out there, if you didn't take an ad out in the paper, nobody knew anything about you unless they knew you. Well, now if you sneeze, you can choose to put it on social media and everybody knows that, oh, she's got a cold, right? Like, so I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's important that we all be thoughtful about the brand that we're broadcasting, because, whether we choose to be unbelievably political one way or the other on the internet, or if we choose to let people know, who we are by always posting exercise videos or whatever it is, we definitely are creating a space for ourselves, and we need to be thoughtful and intentional about that.
And if we learned anything during COVID, it's that you don't exist today if you don't exist online. If people can't find you, if you're invisible, that's a really bad strategy, because nobody's going to know anything about you. And before they invite you to be on their podcast or grab lunch or coffee, what do? They go to Google, they check you out, they go to LinkedIn, they see what comes up when I Google this person. Are they worth my time and energy? Do I want to meet with them? Would they be a good connection?
What's in it for me, right? Like, I think we all by nature think that way. And that's the way adults learn, actually, is how will this advance me? so, so how cool, one, that you were able to shift, right? Because some people don't. I know people who still, think that the only way you can advertise is on paper. And it's like, oh, probably not, right? Like you're just killing trees. That's not what you're supposed to do. But you have evolved and you have shifted and you have created this beautiful business. What advice would you have for our listeners who are mostly leaders in some capacity, who are trying to think strategically about different ways of work, right? How to create productive joy in their space? What advice would you give them?
So you really need to be honest with yourself. First and foremost, kind of what makes you happy? What are you good at? What do you love doing? Because only you can answer those questions. It's not what's going to impress your neighbors, your
Mm,
friends, your in-laws, your parents. That doesn't really matter. You have to define success for you and figure out what brings you joy,
mm,
what makes you kind of unique, special, and different. What lane are you in that you kind of own? When you talk to people and you ask them, what kind of problem when you need help in this area, like, when do you call me? What are those situations when I pop into your brain first? Like, I gotta talk to Dr. Christie. She's really the one who's gonna set me straight. And if you ask a lot of people that question, and you'll start to see probably common themes emerge. And a brand really is like the real estate that you own in your customer's brain.
mm.
So where do they have that emotional connection? Where do they trust and like you? Where do they believe in you? Where do you stand out? And I think when you can answer those questions, you're getting closer to figuring out your brand versus the competition versus everyone else that's out there.
Hmm. I love that. I love you're the real estate that we own in a customer's brain. And what message are you sending? Because you're sending one and you either get to write the narrative or somebody else is going to write it for you. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing we need to own our narrative and we need to be thoughtful about what real estate we're owning. So I have to ask you my favorite question, because I feel like you've danced all the way around it. And now I'm gonna pin you down a little bit. If you had to describe productive joy, how would you do it?
So for me, it's basically, when you get to do what you love doing that brings joy to yourself and others. It's where can you be of service, that it's basically a give and a take. But the more that you do it, the happier you become. And you can really see where you add value, where you make a difference, where, like, the world is better because you are in it,
Yeah.
Like, if you're doing something that benefits your community, your family, your clients, your customers, and they're benefiting, and you're it's like, what do they call it? A continuous cycle, or, it's like the more you give, the more you get back.
A
So it's
positive feedback loop. Yeah.
exactly, that said. And so for me, that really is productive joy, that I'm giving, I'm constantly replenishing the tank, if you will,
Yeah.
because the more that I do, the more that I want to do. And that to me is just like where the magic happens,
Yeah.
because you kind of find your fifth gear or beyond, it's like
Love
things
that.
just start humming.
Well, and so this actually is the third week that we've been producing two guests a week. And earlier this week, we heard from Amy Kemp, and her whole thing is I see you, and it's about your unique genius, right? And such a beautiful combination between what she said and what you're saying about know yourself, know what it is that you bring to the table. When she talked about unique genius, she was really talking about the thing that comes super easy to you, the thing that when you do it, you're just comfortable and out it comes. But other people are like, how did you just do that? And it sounds like that's marketing for you. As I listen to you talk, that is your unique genius. You just see it and you go, yeah, that's the way we should be doing this. And why aren't we doing it this way? What
Yeah.
a gift. And I am so thankful that you're using your gift for others and that you're changing the world with it. That's pretty awesome. So, how would somebody find you? I'm going to guess you've made it easy, but tell us what's the best way to find Paige Arnoff,
Uh,
Mavens and Moguls?
there are two ways. My website, mavensandmoguls.com. It's mavensandmoguls.com. The other place is LinkedIn. Like I said, I was a very early user to LinkedIn. You can see my name is hyphenated, but in LinkedIn, it's all smushed together, no hyphen.
That's probably where I got the extra F. What do you bet?
Maybe. And then, one of my clients always says, because Mavens and Moguls has an ampersand between the two words, and my last name has a hyphen between the two words, she's like, they're just too many words. So she can only remember Paige and Mavens. And so when she Googles it, I pop right up. So thank goodness for search engine optimization. You can find me that way too.
Nice. I love it. Well, I think that all of us need a little more Mavens and Moguls in our lives, especially if we're trying to figure out our personal brand or our work brand, or just hone what it is we do and how we communicate what we do to others, because the world needs us, right? We are each a very unique gift, and everybody doesn't need the same gift, but people do need our gift. And if
Right.
we hide it, that's not okay, because that means somebody is without the gift that they need the most. So thanks for sharing your gift, and thank you for sharing it on Productive Joy. This has been so much both fun and informative for me as I'm learning how to brand myself and put myself out there too. It's been pretty great.
Yeah, I think it really is wonderful when you find out what's really unique, special, and different about you. That is your unique selling proposition. That is the real estate that you own. And that's where, you know, all stars kind of align. And I think, you know, people that really find their groove, it's true. Like you don't necessarily even feel like you're working. You're having fun. You're doing stuff with people you love, helping people you enjoy spending time with. And, you know, brands are about building emotional connections, like, you know, tapping into people's hearts. And I think when you do that, it's like, things just are much smoother. You don't, you're not fighting with yourself. You're not watching the clock. You're not, you know, I know that when people find their zone, it will make all the difference in the world. So
Yes.
have the courage to find it, and you will be very grateful after.
Definitely, Paige, definitely. And I hope that they will seek you out, because it's clear that you not only know what you're talking about, but you are able to share it in a way that leaves me knowing what I'm talking about now, too, which is pretty exciting. But I have some rapid fire questions for you, and we can't leave without those. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Okay. What is your definition of fun?
So fun for me is spending time with people I love. We're laughing, we're moving, you know, I just I love people that are interesting and thoughtful and comfortable in their own skin. And if you could be inside, you could be outside, you could be like doing an activity, you could be drinking coffee, eating ice cream. But if you're with
Knitting, doing touchy.
do exactly all of the above, those are all fun. There's no one definition of fun. I think it's just the right people, the right place, and the right time.
I love it. I love it. Perfect answer. How do you know you're showing up as your authentic self?
I think it's basically when you are comfortable in your own skin, and you're being seen, you're being heard, and you're not kind of like in your head, like, oh, I hope I don't sound stupid, or I hope, I want to make a good impression. It's just you being you, and people loving you for who you are, how you are, where you are. You're not you're not concerned about how you look, how you feel, how you dress. It's you, and you're in your zone, you're in your lane, and you're being appreciated and loved for being who you are and what you bring to the table.
Great answer. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
So my mom was a big believer in, if you wake up and you don't feel well or you're grumpy or whatever, you take a shower, you get dressed, you put on your, outfits, something that makes you feel good, and you basically convince yourself that, you know, put on your happy face, go out, and then do something for somebody else. Don't be such a navel gazer or so in your own head that you're going to stay grumpy. Just be kind of kind to other people, smile, say something nice to someone, compliment them on something they said, something they did, something they're wearing, and it'll make you feel better. If you look good, if you get out of your house, if you take a walk, if you go run an errand, go get a coffee, whatever, you can kind of convince yourself from the inside out that you're not having a bad day. You can make it a good day. It's in your control to do it. So,
Love it. Well, in other words, that we get to manifest our own destinies, right?
yeah.
Like, nobody gets to cause you to have a bad day. That's up to you. All right, last question, and this will be tough because we went in a lot of different directions because we just learned that the word linear doesn't even exist in some languages. So, if people could only remember one major thing from our time together, of all of the brilliant things that you said, what's the one thing that you really want people to walk away with today?
Well, I guess I'd sum it up. I didn't make this up, but I've heard like when you're happy, that leads to success. Success doesn't lead to happiness.
Mm.
It's the other way around. So find what makes you happy. Find what is intuitive to you, what you do better than anybody else. And when you get in that zone, when you find your lane where it's, you being you and you doing what you love that really taps into all the things that make you unique, special, and different, that's going to lead to a successful life and a happy career. I think the other way around, just because you're successful, all the money in the world does not make you happy. There's so many examples out there where people are doing something to impress other people or to make somebody else proud of them. And that is not the way to live an authentic life. So I would just encourage people, you know, find your inner peace and whatever it is. And, it can be something, when you look at all the people in the world who have really done crazy things, but they were intuitive to them, they loved what they were doing, and then look what happens. The stars align and the world conspires
Hmm.
so that, you find what you can contribute to make the world a better place.
Oh, I love that, Paige. Thank you. And thank you for choosing to be on Productive Joy because the reality is you could have been doing anything else for the last 30 minutes or so. And instead, you decided to impart knowledge on all of us. And we're very, very grateful for that. So thank you on behalf of all of the listeners for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christie. It's been awesome talking to you today.
Good, good. And for all of my listeners, I'm telling you, I am bringing some really brilliant people here. So I need you to recognize that and share it with everybody you know. So share this episode, share the last episode, share the next episode, follow. I'll do all the things because honestly, my goal for you is that you have a whole bunch of nuggets of wisdom to choose from, a little free shot of B12, and that you use all of that to figure out a way to turn fun into action.